humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. I'm here today to talk to you about, well, the current situation with COVID-19. This is an update. What are we here? This is April 25th of 2020. Now, first, we're going to look at a couple of things. I've been hearing, let's scratch that. First and foremost, I don't bother listening to the news. I don't read the newspaper. I get word from other sources and from people I'm talking to. This said, I've heard all kinds of interesting theories on what has caused COVID-19. Now let's be realistic here. Okay, with what I've just said, we have to understand certain theories that every one of them, no matter who it's coming from, whether it comes from a layman, somebody on the ground, or one of the government officials or scientists, it doesn't matter. Because of the fact I cannot prove any of them myself, all of them fall under the category of being theories. Now, with this in mind, this pandemic, whether you want to believe it's here or not, is absolutely irrelevant. Okay, the fact of the matter is, you can disagree, you can believe that gravity doesn't exist, or you can believe it does. Either way, gravity is going to play havoc with you. So, keeping this in mind, let's take a look at some of the more interesting ideas. Number one, was it created by some lab? Possible. Okay, absolutely possible. There's all kinds of patents and what have you, and scientific research that is going on behind closed doors. And from what I gather, there is some veracity to the concept that there are viruses that are being built. That said, if it's a virus that got built and got out, if that's the case, okay, probably shouldn't have been working on said virus in the first place. Okay, but since it is, the reality is it's out. We know it's real because if it's not, why would the entire planet, the entire civilized world, be in a state of flux, a state of lockdown in a lot of places? Okay, now people have told me that this may be a biological weapon. Well, think about this. If it were a biological weapon, would the creator from whatever country create a biological weapon without a time killer, without a self-termination point? Now, is it possible that it was a biological weapon and set off? Certainly. But you gotta understand, if it was set off, why set it off so it's going to affect your own country? And the reason I say your own country is apparently it's affecting every one of the countries around the world that we've got contact with. Now, I shouldn't say we, because I got no contact with most of them. But I do have contact with individuals in multiple countries. If it's a biological weapon, then logic would dictate that it has to have a self-termination point in order to avoid creating a major problem for whoever was responsible. Thus far, nobody's found out how to stop it. Therefore, and the analysis from what I gather has not revealed a built-in termination point. Now, that being said, the funnest one I heard was I was talking to somebody the other day, and they literally told me that COVID-19 is a computer virus. Well, let's be realistic, shall we? Computer viri do not kill people. They kill computers. Now, much as people are, by and large, a biological computer, humans have not developed technology at this point to create, at least not to the best of my knowledge, to create a biological virus, not of the caliber of a computer. So, even if they did, okay, let's skip all the conspiracies as to who built what. Can we stop pointing the finger and trying to figure out where it came from? Yeah, it's kind of necessary to understand the virus itself, but that's a case of getting a hold of the virus, which the modern doctors have in multiple countries, and they're pulling it apart to find out how it works. They have to understand how it works in order to be able to stop it. This is clear. But they don't have to know who built it or where it came from. Excuse me. Now, people do have to understand, the scientists do need to understand how it operates because, as was pointed out, in order to, the fact it has happened means it theoretically could happen again. Therefore, understanding how it operates is imperative in order to compensate for it later. Now, the reality behind inventions of any form is, first and foremost, it's easier to destroy something than it is to fix it. So, we have a human race that has completely lost focus. Okay, mankind across multiple so-called first world countries. Let's be clear, every country on here, on this planet, is a first world country. This is the first world of the human race. Regardless of your color, regardless of your political alignment, your social orientation, regardless of your religious philosophy, doesn't matter. Skin color doesn't make any difference. You're all first world because this is the first world of the human race. Okay, this is where we're starting. Now, yeah, we could go into other theories. We're not going to. COVID-19, regardless of where it came from, is here. That's the first thing you have to understand. So, taking this into consideration, okay, let's take a look at how we're going about this. Now, again, I'm talking about this from the standpoint of what I've found. I've been doing my work, the spiritual guidance side of things. I've been doing since I was 10. That's when it became public for me, which means I've got about 80,000 clients over the course of my career of dealing with people and looking at how they think, how they interact. And the one consistency is people are quick to point out where other people are making mistakes or falling short, but they're ignoring what they're doing themselves or choosing to go, I won't go there, or that's not my fault. Well, bad news. COVID-19 does not care one iota where you come from. Doesn't care what your birthright, what your financial state, doesn't care at all who you worship or who you vote for. Your age does not matter. Now, you don't have to believe that people are dying. Okay, you really don't. I am praying for all of you that you don't know anybody that is dying from COVID. Sad to say, we can safely say with the numbers dead that some of you out there have lost people very close to you. Okay, my heart goes out to you. But it's time to realize where the where COVID came from is not the critical factor. What is the critical factor is how you people decide to deal with, and how I, for that matter, decide to deal with the people around me. Okay, take a look at the people next door. Okay, if you're in one of these communities that is in total lockdown, okay, for pity's sakes, stay focused, stay positive on what can happen, on what can be done, and where the government is laying down guidelines. Okay, let's think about that for a minute. The government lays down guidelines. Is it all a conspiracy to control you, to take away your freedom? Well, as was pointed out to me, all your civil liberties and what have you are 100% useless if you're dead. It just doesn't matter. If you're dead, you don't have civil liberties. You don't even have any control over where you get buried. So I suggest you talk to people that you personally know. I do not mean check the media, check the government site. I mean talk to people you personally know and personally trust to get the information on the ground floor. Now, there are reports of mass graves in New York. Now, I personally have never been to New York, and we could go into the philosophy that you can't prove New York exists to me, and I can give you that whole argument later. But I do have contacts that work in New York through satellite connections. Check with your own. Okay, one contact that I had happens to know somebody working in one of the major hospitals. Okay, and they are reporting thousands dying. Now, that being said, panic is undoubtedly going to kill more people than the virus ever can. Okay, that panic is up to you. So let's get into the reality of what to do with this. We can sit and we can complain about what the government is doing, what the scientists are up to, who's got the brains to do what. Okay, I've heard a lot of kind of arguments. And frankly, I've participated in some of the, not in spreading it so much as in, I've got my own views on what is being done and what needs to be done. And, let's face it, trust is just not one of my strongest suits. So, do I trust what's in the media? No, I've heard all arguments. Well, not all of them, but the greater portion of them. So, think of this. The government is doing things in order to try and mitigate the spread. Picture the human race as though you're all trees. It's all one forest. All various different types of trees, but all trees. All different colors, all different makes. Pine, spruce, your birch, the alder, all of these. Okay, even your apple trees and your pear trees, even the little honeysuckle trees. I don't know what their actual name is. That's the name of the flower. But picture all of these trees standing together. Okay, and now light a fire. They're all standing close together. You light the fire, and all of these trees, regardless of their make, are going to go up in flames. A virus works very much the same way. If you take people and you huddle them all together, that virus will jump from one person to another. Now, you can argue with everybody as to whether it jumps by air or whether it jumps by physical contact or whether it has to have bodily fluid. Who really cares? The fact is, it's jumping. Okay. Now, without knowing how it's jumping specifically, we do know if a forest is a tight-knit bunch of trees, that forest will all go up in flame. None of you are safe. Okay. And it is a proven fact. If you take two trees and put them together, they will create a bigger diameter of flame. So if you're trying to say it won't happen to me, and there's three people over there that are going, but we want to stay different, we want to be isolated, and you're looking at it going, but it won't happen to me. What you can't see can't hurt you. I got news for you. This virus is killing people that don't even know they're sick, that don't even know they've got it, also known as being asymptomatic. Keep people together, that virus will jump from one person to another. I hope people are going to start looking at this and go, okay, the government may not be doing things perfectly. They're running essentially blind for whatever reason. They're still working in the dark. Now, you can argue that point all you want. Okay, and you can sit and you can debate it while the forest burns. You can debate it while the people around you are dying, while people in other cities are dying. Sooner or later, I don't care how remote you are, sooner or later, it will jump to your community. I'm hoping, okay, and that is it'll jump to your community if you don't isolate. Now, let's get back to the other side of this. Okay, and yes, I realize I'm jumping from one side of this to another. Understand, the reason for that is this is all happening at once. It's not a question of me jumping around, it's a question of I just can't say more than one thing at a time. Lord knows I can say more than one thing at a time. Now, the government is doing what it can, and it's asking you to follow the guidelines. Most of them are frankly reasonable. Yes, some people are going a little overboard. Some people are going into a little bit more panic than others. Okay, but I myself, now, I was lucky in a lot of ways. I've been basically reclusive for 10 years, so all this isolation has not had a lot of impact on me. Has it had an impact on my son? You bet. Okay, it's driving him completely nuts. Okay, but there is no way I'm letting him out of the house. Okay, much as I would love to be able to. Guidelines are set in place to maintain some semblance of order. And the longer people fight the idea of whether or not that's a good idea, or whether the government is doing it right or not, the government, like you, know that the economy has to be maintained, which means they've got to do something as soon as possible to open it up. But understand, if you've got this virus going on, or if you've got a forest fire, the last thing you want to do is put more wood on the forest fire, in spite of what you want, in spite of wanting your business to be up and running, in spite of wanting your world to go back the way it was. Personally, I hope it doesn't go back to the way it was for one reason. Mankind across the board. Okay, now there are some definitive exceptions, and if you're one of these exceptions, absolutely thank you. But mankind across the board seems to have forgotten the fact that the people of this planet are all first world people. They are all on this, the first world of Earth. You know, Earth, all the people here, most of you out there that are listening to this are human, or at least partially so. In either event, it doesn't seem to be differentiating. The virus doesn't really care. So stay following the rules that the government is laying out. Okay, whether you agree with them or not is irrelevant. You don't have to agree that gravity works to realize if you step off the balcony, you're going to hurt yourself, in all likelihood. Now, we talk about the government being the problem, the government being secret. Okay, let's understand. We have government controlling different major parts of the world. We have companies working inside that government. Okay, controlling their little part of the world. And then we have the home front. Okay, you as parents, as homeowners, as renters, whatever. You control your own home, but you have to operate inside the community laws. Now ask yourself this, especially those of you that have children of any age. Okay, ask yourself this. Do you tell your kids everything you're up to, everything you know about the big world? Do you sit down with your 3-year-old and go, this is what mom and dad are doing to try and save money, to try and keep the house over the roof over our heads? Do you tell your kids everything you're doing? I'd lay odds not. Now, I'm a little different from that standpoint. I do talk to my son. Now, my son's only 15, and I still talk to him about household finance. Because when he gets out of the house, he needs to know from somewhere. Where it comes to your world, your house, you had everything going in a certain pattern. That world is gone. This is not a question of getting it back to having everything you had. The time of having all of the physical material stuff at your fingertips, being able to come and go as you please, that is over. Okay, we are starting over. Now, I saw it written in chalk on a walkway the other day. Somebody had, instead of writing graffiti and derogatory comments and what have you, they literally wrote, "We are in this together," regardless of where you are. Take a look out your window. Take a look at the neighbors that you know. Are they all identical to you? Do they have the same hair color? Do they have the same skin color? Do they even worship the same people or talk the same language? COVID doesn't care one way or the other. It's got no feeling towards anybody in particular. It is not targeting one type of people. Okay, it is not taking out only one classification of voters or one classification, one age group. It's taking out people across the board. Now, every person on the planet, in a way, is a member of government. Understand, everybody in government is first and foremost a person. They have their own homes. They have their own jobs, their own businesses. Sometimes their businesses strictly in the concept of trying to run the country, in spite of what everybody's doing. Now, yes, every individual has their own reasons for doing things, and everybody out there has their own. They've all got a capacity to manipulate things. But let's understand, manipulation is simple. This cell phone, if I'm moving it, I'm manipulating it. Now, yes, that's taking a little bit more literal term on it, but understand, COVID itself is here. Where it came from is, at this point, irrelevant. How it operates is very necessary. And hats off to the scientists that are figuring it out. I am not trained in science. Okay, as a matter of fact, I'm frankly not trained. I graduated. That's pretty much where my training ended. Aside from, as the saying goes, the school of hard knocks. But every person on the planet is essentially a member of government. You govern your own life. Okay, and you can argue I live in a country that doesn't have freedom of choice. The one thing every person on the planet still has is freedom of thought. At this point, though there are some telepaths out there, they do not have the capacity to, at this point, to control how you're thinking. How you're acting, they can put laws in place, they can put punishments in place. It doesn't work well. Your thoughts are still your own, and you still have control over how you act, how you behave. So ask yourself, have you ever, running your own household, made a mistake? Or made a miscalculation that you had to go back and correct and modify what you were doing? Okay, I know I personally have. Take a look at the state of my office behind me. Okay, you see stuff on the shelves that, frankly, is a little disorganized? It is. Okay, I'm not perfect by any stretch, but I will tell you, the first rule of thumb and the hardest thing for anybody to do, from what I've discovered, is look in the mirror and acknowledge your own shortfalls. Now, the governments are doing what they can. Scientists are doing what they can. The critical factor is that it is time for people, for individuals, to do what you can. Never mind pointing the finger, because let's say you figure out who caused it or where it came from. Let's just go out on a limb and go, you figured it out. Does that change the fact as to whether or not it's here? Does it change the fact as to whether or not you know how it came about? And does it change the fact whether or not people are dying? Okay, now you can argue the point that people don't know that people aren't dying. It's all a media hoax. This is one heck of a media hoax because it's got the entire planet. Now understand, that's a cute thought if you think about the number of different languages, the number of different governments. You know, if governments if this were a major world pandemic that was organized, you'd think that the people involved would have the ability to get everything running in tandem. They wouldn't be scrambling as individual research programs in multiple different countries trying to figure this out. Okay, you are all one race, just one. Now you can call it what you will. You're different colors, different nationalities, different heritages, and I will guarantee the people living down in the desert countries or the desert states have no clue how to function in an Arctic setting, and vice versa. People living in a completely rural setup, most of them have no clue on how to live in a city, in an urban setup. So this is a question of people working together, meaning communicate. Now, since you are on a computer, if you're looking at this, if you're looking at it personally, then you're looking at a situation where you've got access to technology. Now, this brilliant concept that this whole virus is computer generated or is some sort of massive generation to drive business to certain companies. If you were trying to make your business better, Would you try killing off your own people? Okay, the people working for you. Would you target the ones that you've got employed? Okay, or would you set something loose that would likely target the people that are, take out the people that you employ? Think about that. This is one race. You're in on this is one race. Everybody is in a first world country. Nobody is better than anybody, and COVID could care probably less, if it cared at all, as to who you are. Doesn't matter what you are, doesn't matter what your profession. A viri does not have any matter, and does not have any concern. I like the way it was put in a movie recently, that an ant has no quarrel with a boot. Well, an ant doesn't, but the individual ant probably has an opinion on whether or not it gets stepped on. Okay, this virus doesn't care who you are. If it can connect to your biology, you're in danger. And you can complain about that all you want. You can use any argument you want. Will it make you feel any better if you come down with the virus? Will it make you feel any better if you go, I warned you and you didn't listen and now you're sick? Well, I've been trying to warn people for decades about things that are coming up, and been told most of the time that I was nuts. Unfortunately, about 30 years after I tell people this is coming, you end up discovering it anyway. Okay, and I'm not going to go into that right now, but I will tell you this. Where it comes to COVID, regardless of where it came from, it is here. Regardless of whether you believe it, keeping away from people, keeping isolated from people, will slow the spread of it down long enough for the scientists to figure out how it works. Now, I couldn't put two cells together to make them mix and understand them. I don't have the training. So I leave that to somebody else. The social implications of what's going on, I absolutely have enough background in, to the tune of about 80,000 clients or so that I've dealt with over the years. Okay. So, follow what's being guided, because you staying separated from people cuts down on the odds that you're going to get caught with it. Doesn't eliminate them. Okay. For you, and for those of you that are businesses, take a look at that. I understand the financial side. Okay. And, I can only do what I can for myself from that end. I don't have the money to fund everybody. Sadly, it doesn't work that way for me. So, pay attention to that side of it. Okay, where they're telling you stay home, the reason for that is they're trying to cut down on the spread of the virus. Whether you agree with their methods or not, it's the only methods we've got for the moment. Okay, so that said, we're going to cut this short instead of running a whole hour on this. We're coming up on the half-hour mark here. That being said, and I should have said this at the beginning, but I hope you liked the video. I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, to share it with as many people as you can, and understand you don't have to worry about, you don't have to understand where it came from. Yes, scientists need to understand how it operates in order to deal with it. From my understanding, they're on the verge of figuring things out, but they are still miles away from a functional vaccine. Okay, and that's another issue altogether. But that said, there's lots of ways. If you've got other questions and you desire to ask them of me, lots of contact information below on this video. Okay, below in the description. So, if feel free to contact me through any one of those methods. Okay, until then, take care of each other and yourselves, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.